Hey, Ellen. These look much better in regard to the quality of your contact sheets. The images they're much better exposures. Obviously, I have a few underexposures still, and a few overexposures, like with a lot of glare. But it looks like, here, for instance, but it looks like you're getting a little bit more comfortable with your lights. So that's great. And I love these close-ups. And I'm going to have to go search. Well, it looks like, oh, you gave me the citation. Perfect. I'm going to check out this article. It sounds really interesting. Thank you for including that. And then the difference between the white balance and your outdoor and your indoor shots is good. It's dealt with. That's great. And I think that this looks a lot better. You're getting there. You're getting there. So the next thing that we need to move on is using, where's your equipment set up? There it is. There's one of them. I'm assuming the light's right there, kind of snug behind the camera, because it looks like there's a tripod stand right there. And then over here, your other equipment shot has a soft light and a hard light, both on one side. So it's very hard directional light. Well, it should be soft. Hold on, that's soft and directional. And then is this on the background, maybe? Let me see if I can find what I think is creating this. No, it doesn't look like it's really on the background. It looks like it's more on her, because I think that's what's giving us this, really intense, direct reflection on her face and in her hair. Which isn't necessarily a bad thing, like this used to a compositional or narrative advantage can be really well placed. And so like now you know how to make this. You know how to make a very high ratio while the image is still pretty high key, meaning it's got a pretty high exposure value. God, I just love your model. These are great. Like this is just a fantastic capture of a pose right there. And then these outdoor images are fine too. We really want you to use your lights, but I think it's a totally valid experiment to check out the difference between what you get in the studio and then something else outside. This is learning, so that's great. And the close-up crop to her eyes, really, I think that's pretty effective as well. So anyways, what I was going to say is what we need to move on now is starting to work with your modification tools, because I can see that you're starting to use your reflector, good, and you're using a softbox, good. However, what I also see is that the light seems to, it still feels, and maybe this was intentional, but it feels uncontrolled to me to a certain extent, which isn't to say you're doing a horrible job. It just means that like we've got to work more with understanding what the lights do, at different distances and different intensities of power. I don't know if your lights have power adjustments on the back, but if they do, that makes a huge difference. And if they don't, just moving your light closer or further away from your subject will make a big difference. Adding a diffuser will make a big difference on the intensity of the light, not just the quality, not just whether or not it's hard or soft. It's actually going to take away from some of its brightness, its lumens. Usually about a stop or two. And then lastly, your light meter. I've been thinking about this, and light meters they have light cells. This thing that's called a light cell in them. It's a mechanism that's sensitive to light, and they do die over time. They do. I actually have gone through several little. I used to shoot a medium format Pentax a lot, and it didn't have a built-in light meter. And I would use it for pointing and shooting stuff, but I still had to carry around a light meter with me, and I didn't like carrying around my expensive equipment, so I went out and bought like a $15 handheld light meter, and I ended up going through like 3 of them over the few years that I used that camera regularly, because those light cells just fade out and die. Now on a really high quality light meter, they're going to last a long time, but they do fade out and die. So I want to know this about your light meter. I think it was used. Do you know if it sat in the dark for a really, really long time? Because that's what kills the light cells, is sitting in the dark for a really, really long time. They just become dormant, really. I mean, that's not exactly what happens, but it's kind of like what feels what happens. Because what would happen to mine is I would, put it in its little bag, and I would put it in my camera bag, which of course was black, and the little light meter bag was black. And then I'd probably tuck it away all winter because the camera body wasn't really very weather repellent, and so I really only used it when the weather was good. And it would seem like every 3 winters or so, the meter would just die after that. And it wasn't the battery. So that's my one question. My other question is, did you check the ISO and make sure that your light meter is set to the same ISO as your camera? And then lastly, it could just be, again, where you're holding it when you're you know, the difference between where and how you're holding the light meter in the scene. Because here you've got the light meter kind of facing up to the sky. It should be facing the camera's lens exactly. It should be completely parallel and pointed directly at the camera's lens. Like here it's kind of pointed down, here it's pointed up. You know what I mean? And the light meter use has to be very, very, it has to be pretty careful. And that would also explain to me why you're getting underexposures, because generally if you're pointing it up, there's more light up because there's probably a white ceiling bouncing some light back up there. You know, maybe the lights are coming directly across this way, so there's more light up here than there is, you know, directly between the light meter and the camera. So that might make a difference too. So you might want to just do some tests, you know, and hold it like you're doing it here, where it's kind of not really facing the camera. It's kind of facing away from the camera, not like directly away from camera, but kind of gently away from the camera up into the sky. And then try holding it completely perpendicular to your subject and pointing directly at the camera's lens and see if you get different readings. Because these meter shots are bigger than the last ones that I had to look at. So here I'm able to see that it's not actually pointing directly at the camera. You need it to point directly at the camera in incident mode to get an accurate reading. So try that. And then my last suggestion is see if you can't buy a replacement Lumisphere. I don't know why you would need one, but it seems like it's a little plastic doohickey that maybe corrodes over time. I don't know. That would be my last suggestion. But it seems to me, I don't know, but it seems to me that if the Lumisphere was really the problem, that you would actually be constantly overexposing your images, not underexposing. And it's a constant underexposure. So, I don't know. I hope some of that helps. I'm really trying. I'm trying to figure out what could be going on with it. I really think that there's a lot going on here with it not pointing directly towards the camera. And then I would start to think about maybe the light cells dying or it's becoming dormant. And then lastly, I would think about the Lumisphere, to see if you can't just pick up a replacement Lumisphere from the company. They probably sell them. Okay, so maybe I'd do the Lumisphere second, and then I'd worry about the light cells dying, because if the light cells are dying, the meter's shot. But usually, like on a nice sturdy meter like this, you know, it should take longer. It should take a long time for that to happen. Not like 3 years with my little rinky-dink $15 meters that I pick up and keep in my bag and forget about. All right, so I hope that helps. But yeah, I would like to talk to you more in your assignments about your use of your light modification tools, because like I said, as you become accustomed to the way that light works, you know, the way that it affects your subjects, you know, diffused or undiffused, at a close range, at a far range, balanced, reflected, or direct. Then we can start talking about creative resolutions. So here, like I said, in your contact sheets, I can definitely see a lot more ambition in your use of your lights and a lot more understanding. We still need to work a little bit more on it, but it's getting a lot better. There's just a huge improvement just between this assignment and assignment number 2 this week. So really well done. Thank you, Ellen.